This is part 3 of our Pink Flowers journal. And so the first video, we took a pizza box and we painted it, we distressed it, and we got this great like dark gray background for this journal cover, and we did the outside and the inside of the journal. And then in the second video, we painted the flowers on the front. And in this video, we're going to be adding different embellishments to it and then adding the pages, and we're going to be binding the pages in. And what I have here laid out, there are 5 eyelets, and I basically bought off of Amazon. I bought eyelets that I guess I didn't check the size too well, so they're supposed to be like 3/16 size, because I have a crocodile and it has the 3/16 size on one side and then the 1/8 size on the other. And I bought these eyelets and they came out a little bit larger than the 3/16 size. So what I'm doing here is I'm just laying them out, and I did measure. You see I have my ruler there, and I basically made sure that the one in the middle was centered, and then I went from there. So then I made sure that the 2 outer ones were the same distance in from the edge, and then I was able to do the second pair that are in the middle there. So I just kind of took my Dilutions journaling block, which is also like a ruler as well, and this is just a bit shy of like a 9-inch size, the tallness of this journal. So then I was kind of able to easily measure where that center eyelet needs to go, and then I just measured out from there and just made sure that they were all centered properly. So what I did is I took that white Pitt pen and I just made like a white dot where, like, when the eyelets were all placed, I just did a white dot in the middle, just a light one. And then, so I have the positions for all of these eyelets, and I'm calling them eyelets, but they do have like washers on the back. So I'm not sure if that makes it a grommet, but they're just like eyelets that I bought from Amazon. But like I said, they're a little bit too large for the 3/16 size. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just using my crocodile, and I'm going to punch the holes, but I'm going to have to make them a little bit larger to fit these eyelets in. So the eyelets are really nice though, so I definitely want to use them. And they do work with the crocodile, like actually setting the eyelet. That still does work, even though they're a little bit too large. But I think I could use like a hole puncher and just punch a larger hole. But truthfully, I was a little bit afraid of having the hole punch too large. So I thought it was better to just punch the smaller size and then just kind of wrestle them in there. So this eyelet, like I said, it's a different kind. My other eyelets are like We Are Memory Keepers, or different ones that I've bought from Joann's. But this type, you put it through and then there's a washer on the back. So I do like this type of eyelet because it sets a little bit nicer than the other kinds that kind of like splay out. This one, since it has a washer, it more like gives you a nice finished back to it. So I actually do like that. And when you buy these on Amazon, like these different sets, of course, next time I order them, I'm going to be a lot more careful about the size that I'm ordering. But when you buy them, you could get a manual setter if you wanted to do that. It's just, I love my crocodile, so I'm going to use that whenever I can. So you saw I just put the scissors in and just kind of twisted it around to make it a little bit bigger. And I'm just doing it a little bit at a time so that I just don't make the hole too big. Because I have other journals where I'm binding through an eyelet, and sometimes if I make that hole too big, the eyelets will actually just fall, like they'll be loose in the hole. So for me, I just wanted to make sure that they fit nice and tight in there. So I'm just kind of keep adjusting till I can fit these eyelets in here. So like I said, a little bit of a wrestling match, but but that's okay with me. So in this case, I'm going to put these eyelets in, since I know that they're fitting kind of snug. I'm going to put all the eyelets in at once and then just set them that way. So it just depends, like different situations I would only set like one eyelet at a time, because basically they could fall out. While you're setting one, the next one's falling out. So it could be a little frustrating, but in this case they're all so tight that I'm just going to put them all in, and then I'm just going to set them one at a time. So this is a cardboard box and then craft paper on this edge, and then I've painted it. So it's kind of thick, so I'm not worried at all about rustling these things in here. The material that I'm putting these eyelets in is plenty thick enough that it's not going to rip out. So if it was like a thin piece of paper, I wouldn't be wrestling it like this, but since I know it's nice and thick, it can take it. And part of the reason is because that edge is like glued on here, so I know that it's nice and strong. So this is just a decorative edge that I'm doing. Now down the road I could use this for closures, because at this point I wasn't going to add a closure to this journal, but I could always add that later and use these eyelets to do that. But at the moment I'm just going to use this for like a decorative edge. So I have all the eyelets in, and now I'm going to go back and put these washers in, and I'm not sure if I'm using the right term, but I'm going to call them washers, but they're real thin, so it's nothing major that's getting added to this, but it is enough that when you set the eyelet, the metal kind of curls around this washer, and it is a nice finished edge. I actually really like it. This is the first time I bought this type of eyelet, and I've seen other people that have bought these and they actually really like them, so I thought I would try it, and I do like them as well. I like the other kinds as well, but when you put a regular eyelet in, especially using the crocodile, sometimes they can splay out. It almost looks like a frayed edge. And for me, I don't mind that when it's on the inside of my journal, but if it is like scratchy at all, then I will add like a layer of glue around it, and it just kind of smooths that out a little bit. But this type of eyelet with a washer does give, it's a taller, like it sets taller, but it gives you that nice edge, so I do really like that. And I do think it's amazing. The crocodiles are just some of the best tools as far as I'm concerned that I use. And I think it's awesome that it will actually set a larger eyelet than the one it's designed to do, which would be the largest, like a 3/16 eyelet. So now I have the whole setup here. For me is upside down. So normally I would be setting it from the top, and at this point I'm setting it from the bottom. So if you're going to do it this way, you just want to make sure the nice side is underneath that I can't see, and you just want to make sure that you have the peg part going through the nice side of the eyelet. So for me, the peg right now is upside down, and then there's almost like a hill looking setting. That's the way I have mine set, and that is like upwards. So that's what I'm seeing, and I'm putting the peg through the underside. So if you've done this before, you know what I'm talking about. But if you're new to eyelets, you just want to make sure that the really nice front side of the eyelet has almost like a peg setting, and then the back of it is more of a spread out kind of a hill looking thing, and that's why the back spreads. So you could do a couple different settings with the crocodile, but what I do is I actually have two. I bought like an extra crocodile, so I always have one set to the 3/16 setting, and then I have my other one. I put like washi tape on it and I labeled it. My other one is always set to the 1/8 setting, and that way I tend to just grab them and use them a lot easier if I know I don't have to keep adjusting those little cubes on the top, because I guess that always makes me nervous. So since I use this tool quite a bit, I figured I would just buy an extra one, and that way I'm just more like I'll use 1/8 inch eyelets more, since I have one that's dedicated to my 1/8 inch eyelets, and that way it's just always set. I never change the settings on it, and I never have to worry about it. So something to think about if that would work for you. So right now I have those 5 eyelets set on the front of the journal, and now I'm just trying to figure out what eyelets I'm going to use on the binding edge, because this time I'm going to set a few eyelets in here, and that's how I'm going to bind my pages. So normally I would be just like doing a needle and thread through the binding area of the journal, but this time I'm just going to put some eyelets in here and thread it through those eyelets, just for something different. So I'm just trying to figure out what works in this journal. And I thought the pink would look nice, but as I'm laying it out, I feel like I just want to use like almost like the gunmetal, where I'm using like the gunmetal paint. I'm just going to use that type or color of an eyelet, just so it kind of blends in a little bit easier. Then the only thing popping out are these flowers. But for me, you can see how I store my eyelets, and some of these, most of these I get from like We Are Memory Keepers or We Are Makers, and they're just ones that I've ordered over the years. So if I wanted like pink ones, I would then order a set of pink, and then I would just keep adding to my collection as I had new projects. And so then I just stored light colors together in like these little containers. So like this one, I have all of my like lighter neutral colors. I think I have all of my neutral colors in here. So anything that was like the tans, the yellows, the beiges, and then all of my metallic ones, I just kind of threw in one container. So I also bought like a pack or two from like Joann's, where they have the assortment of eyelets that are just like all different metallic, and I don't think they sell those anymore, because I actually have been looking for like more packs of eyelets to buy, and I have seen some lately at Michael's, but I have not really seen them at Joann's. They do have some in like the sewing section, but I'm not totally sure they're the right size, so I would have to go see. But those are like, they'll have a small pack, and I find that they're a little bit expensive to buy them that way. So like these packs that I've gotten from Joann's like years ago, but I really like them. But they're all different metal finishes. So in this case, I'm trying to find like 4 that are the exact same finish, and I think I'm having a little bit of a time here trying to just find 4 that are exactly the same, because actually they're all a little bit different from each other. So just trying to get that all figured out. But I do kind of like having a large selection of these eyelets. I think it's just one of those things that even though I have like hundreds of eyelets, I feel like I need more eyelets, but I'm pretty sure I don't. But I do really like these wider eyelets that you can get from We Are Memory Keepers, which now I think is We Are Makers. But you can also get off-brand ones like from Amazon or different places. And I have not gotten those, so I'm not sure about the quality of those. But I do like using those wider eyelets as well. They both set pretty much the exact same way. And they both have the same size hole that you punch. But I do really like those. But I also have like a little container of like, I think blue eyelets and purple. So all different colors. And then here you can see my two crocodiles, and I just have one drawer with these in them, but I could only find the same color blue. So it would have been nice if like one was one color and one was another color, but I buy these at Joann's, so they seem to carry the blue. And I just bought recently the Big Bite. I've been wanting that for years. And I just bought it, and it's the same color blue. So, but like I said, my crocodile that I use for an 1/8 inch eyelets, I have washi tape, and I've written on there in Sharpie that it's for my 1/8 inch eyelets. But I do think that it really worked out well for me to have like an extra one. And then I can just kind of grab it and go. I don't have to worry about changing settings or anything. Now the Big Bite, I don't have a choice. Like, I have to change. Like, you have to change when you're going to punch the holes. And then you have to change it to like a setting mode. So far, I think I've only been setting the 3/16 inch eyelets, but if I did go to the 1/8, I'd probably have to change the little cubes on there and go down to that. But this Big Bite, I've definitely used it since I've bought it, and I'm going to use it here because the difference is that the Big Bite just goes in further. So the crocodile itself will not go in far enough on some of these eyelets. So I'm going to set it at a certain, like there's like a little ruler guide on here. So I'm going to set it for a certain distance, and then I will punch the two holes that are more towards the inside of the journal so that they're at the exact same distance from the edge. And then I'm going to go back and do the next set of holes. I'll change that setting, and then I'll do the next two. I'll do the one on the bottom, then turn around and do the one on the top. And that way they're both like equally distant from each other and equally distant from the edge. So, like I said, I'm still learning how to use this. But that process, makes sense to me how to do it. And one of the reasons I got this Big Bite is because I like, how on a traveler's notebook, it has like an eyelet, and then you can put a string through in the middle, like of the back of the journal. And then you can have your, like an elastic going all the way around the journal. So I was finding that I always wanted to do that. And sometimes I would just punch a hole and not do an eyelet. And of course that, tends to wear down over time. But I figured I had wanted to do that enough times that I thought it would be worth getting this Big Bite. So I'm sure you can see this, but that first hole that I punched was not in the middle of that binding area. Unfortunately, it went off to one side, so I'm going to try to make sure I don't do that again. But I'm just going to keep moving forward because otherwise I would have to... I think there's a couple ways I could deal with that, and of course one is just to go with it, which is what I'm doing. I could also just like paint some cardboard and just almost like put an inner piece and just paint it black and distress it or whatever. And then I could just have like an extra piece on there and then repunch those holes. So that was another way I could have dealt with it too. But I thought what I would do here is just when I get the eyelets on, that I will do, like when I bind the pages, I'll just do it and add ribbon or something with a big bow so that you're not going to see that one it's off too far to one side. So that's what I'm planning to do, is just like add some dangles and maybe some extra bows or something where I'm not seeing that that one is off to one side. So that's how I'm going to deal with this. But I do think this might happen as I'm learning how to use this Big Bite, because I would say you can see everything really well. It's just it's harder for me to judge it until I get used to it. So I'm now going back. I have all these holes punched, and now I'm just going to go back and set these eyelets. So I wasn't sure if I would like using this Big Bite, but I really do. I just think that, like, when I'm going to go to punch a hole, I kind of do a little dry run so I can see where that hole is getting punched, because I'm still getting used to that too, because it punches one size hole in one place and the different size hole in a different place. If you buy this, you'll understand what I'm saying. So I just have to kind of eyeball like where all this is going, and if I was doing things that weren't lining up with each other, of course it wouldn't matter so much. But while I'm doing that, like I'm thinking what I bought it for is just punching like one hole somewhere, then it wouldn't matter as much. But in this type of a thing where I'm trying to get like a line of eyelets, if you get something out of alignment, it shows up more. So not quite as forgiving there. But now I'm actually glad that I didn't use like a bright pink eyelet, because that would really have stood out that it's a little bit misaligned here. So kind of nice that I went with a matching one. But yeah, I would say overall, I am just like loving this new tool, the new Big Bite. I really like that. And I love the crocodiles as well. So these are really great things. And I have never stopped to practice to use it. So that's probably something I should have done rather than using it on, projects that I can't really screw up on, So I don't know, maybe I will spend some time like using it for tags or something, and so I can just get a little bit more acquainted with where things are getting punched through and things like that. So here I am using paper that I have coffee dyed, and I have dyed with, it's like watercolor glitter ink, and what I'm doing is I'm putting them through a Martha Stewart punch, like an edge punch. And this is one of the larger edge punches. But what I'm doing is I'm putting that edge of the paper like in the exact same spot each time. So for me, I'm starting out lining it up with the one edge of kind of like that larger box in the middle. But I'm just trying to be really consistent about that, since I'm doing multiple sets of paper. I just want them to be somewhat lined up. So once you get some of this punched, you have to go back and you have to match up those pictures. And you can match up the pictures on both sides. So in this case, I'm doing the top side. And then I'm going to have to go back and punch that first little bit. But I thought this was a nice design because it has like a nice little flower in there, and it's a nice large design. And I'm doing one edge of the paper, and you can see why when I'm done. But so here again, I'm taking, I think, about 3 pages. And that's the artsy glitter ink that I used to. I basically added it to when I was coffee dyeing paper. And then it came out this really nice bright pink color. And I don't know if you can see it on camera, but it's very glittery. It's really cute. So, but I thought this would be nice, like a nice bright pink paper going in this journal. So my punch is, I would say, seizing up a little bit. So I'm just I keep just like punching it so it will release so I can get my paper in there. So it probably needs to be oiled or something, but I'm not going to do it till after this project. But I have had these Martha Stewart punches for a while, so. And I can't see that it's seizing up, but the paper just isn't fitting in. It's like not going in all the way, so. Just trying to get it so that it will let me put that paper through. So again, I'm just lining up those designs. And then I'm just going to punch it that way. And that's pretty reliable to get a nice edge that is continuous, that it doesn't look like it, got mixed up in the middle or anything. And normally this is a quick thing to do. It's just that because, like I said, mine seems to be sticking or seizing up a little bit. It's just giving me a little bit more trouble than normal. And I'm just getting like those little edges off of there. So when you use these Martha Stewart punches, the scraps kind of just fall underneath it. It's not catching them at all. So every once in a while, you just gotta clean it up. So I'm just trying to get these really nicely lined up. And then I just go back and match it on the other side and get that little teeny bit. So I thought about like starting it at the actual design, but the truth is it's much easier to line it up on that straight edge rather than in the design. So I think if I had to do this again, which I do this a lot on the edge of my journal pages, I think it's really nice to use these edge punches. And sometimes I will do different size pages so that you can see like some pages are plain and other pages have like a punched out edge on them and they kind of waterfall on top of each other. I think that's really pretty. But I also like doing this where I'm doing the same edge all the papers. I do think that looks pretty nice too. But I do think punching one edge is a really nice, almost like embellishment in the journal. So when you open it up, it has all these beautiful flowers. And I could do both sides of the page as well. But in this case, I'm just going to do the one side. Okay, so I think I got myself lost here a little bit, but as long as I keep matching it up to the design, it doesn't really matter. It will still match up. But somehow I've got parts missing in this one. I don't know what I did. But when you're doing pages like this, it is really worthwhile to just kind of line it up a few times rather than be in a rush, because then I always do screw it up. So But like I said, these punches are great and they're very reliable, so if something's messed up, it's usually operator error. So I do have I probably have one drawer, maybe two drawers of these Martha Stewart punches, and they have the edge punches and then also the corner punches, and I do have multiple designs, and then I get like all the coordinating punches. And I've used these quite a bit over the years. I do have like my favorite designs and then other designs like this one. I don't use that often, but since this is a big flower on it, I thought this would be really pretty. So this journal I'm doing about like 10 or 12 pages. So not a huge number of pages, but then when you double it up, then it's, it's plenty to use for a lot of different things. So. And some people will say, well, what do you use all these journals for? Or, what do you put in junk journals? And I will do different things with these journals, but normally it's some kind of a theme. So sometimes if I'm working on a project, I'll grab a journal and I'll kind of work through like a project. And so everything will be in that one journal, and then I might have that like in my bag until that project's done, and then, then I'll put that journal away. But that's the type of thing I'm usually using it for, is like a kind of a themed thing, whether I'm like figuring something out, like music wise, or organizing, or, let's say I'm going through all my videos or something like that. But anyway, I'm usually using it as like a themed kind of a journal. And I also do journals for trips as well, or vacation type things. I will pull a journal and have it like a theme if I'm going on a certain trip. So in this case, in order to fit the journal, I'm not folding them in half, because if I fold it in half, then the pages would be too small for this journal. So that's why I'm folding it like an offset here, and that way the pages fit. So the first set of pages is going to be smaller than that second half of pages, and then the second half obviously has a nice design on the edge. So I just think it looks kind of cool. And I could do, like I said, I could do more punching on this smaller page, or the smaller part of the page. I do think that would look nice too. I could round the corners. I could do all different things, but in this case, I'm going to leave it as it is. So here I'm going to clip these pages down, since I'm going to match where I'm going to bind these pages with those eyelets. So if I'm just sewing pages in, I may or may not clip them, because a lot of times when you clip it down, it distorts it. So that's why many times I'm just holding it and I'm not clipping it in. But in this case, I need to kind of match those pages against where those eyelets are. So in this case, I am going to go ahead and clip these in. And I think for me, the problem is that when you clip pages down, you're basically pushing it to one side of that binding when they really need to be in the middle of the binding. I think that's kind of the problem. But, you know, many people are clipping them every time they sew a binding on. It just depends. Like, obviously, some things work for some people and not for other people. So if you're new to binding pages, I would just try it both ways and just see what is easier for you. So since I've done so many, I'm just showing you here my drawers. This is like a set. It's like a jewelry box that I got from the Sundance catalog. And I have 2 of these different ones. But I really like these drawers. This set of drawers is just sitting on my desk. But I really like those drawers for my metal embellishments and clips and things. But yeah, that's, I think, the Sundance catalog. It's a really nice resource for these like handmade jewelry boxes. They're so pretty, but they work really well. And I have another one those are like really skinny drawers. And I have another one that's larger, like square drawers. So they do have different sizes. And they're a little pricey, I would say. Like, I think when I bought them years ago, they were probably $40 or something. But it's just one of those things where I've had it on my desk for years and years, and it's in itself, I think, is like a work of art. I think they're, you know, made. I'm not sure where they're made, but it's like a artistic community that makes them and paints them, and they're just so pretty. So it's almost like a nice decoration as well as something practical. But if you're interested in that at all, you could look at the Sundance website. And it's Sundance catalog. There's also, obviously, the Sundance Film Festival. But the catalog has clothes and jewelry boxes and different, like, home things. But you might like something there. You might find something that you like. All right, so I'm going to have my binding kit out here. And I'm going to be starting from the outside. I've threaded a needle with embroidery thread, and I'm doing like a double layer of that. And if you're having a hard time getting like thicker layers through the needle, you just want to spread them out so that you're not having the bulk of it kind of all in one spot. You just want to spread the bulk of it across that eye of the needle, and that helps you be able to thread it a little bit better. So I'm going from the outside in, so wherever I start, that's where the thread tails end up. If I started in the middle, I would have thread tails in the middle here. And I do it both ways. It just depends on what look you're going for in that particular journal. In this case, I'm going to have the thread tails on the outside, and I think I'll be adding some dangles to the outside of this journal. So I'm just trying to be careful where this hole is going through. Just want to make sure that it's centered on the paper and that it's lined up with those eyelets. So I'm just trying to be extra careful here. And this is, like I said, that I'm using like multiple layers of embroidery floss, so it is giving me a little bit of a struggle here, but I'm just gonna be patient and try to make sure that all these thread layers are going through. So I think if I had to do it again, I would have just cut it longer, but this embroidery floss that I had was kind of in a tangle, and I think once you get thread in a tangle or floss in a tangle, it can be a little bit difficult to work with it at all. So I'm just trying to slow down and be a little bit patient with these different layers until I can get a good knot here. And I'm just going to tie a knot, and then if I can, do a double knot, and then I'm going to go ahead and glue that. So sometimes if I can only make like one knot in it, then I'll just add a little dot of glue just to make sure that it's staying in place. So I just want to make sure that it went through the paper correctly and it's lined up, and then it looks good. Just that there's no like gaps in the thread or anything. I'm trying to make sure that it's tight enough that it will stay nicely bound. So I'm leaving these tails a little bit long, and I typically do this, and then once I figure out when the journal's done, I can go back and just trim those shorter if that's what I want to do. So we have the top side bound, and I'm going to go back and do the bottom area here. Alright, so we're just going to repeat the process on the other side here and go in from the outside. It doesn't matter which hole you go through, because you're just going in one and out the other. So just going to repeat that process, but since I'm using an eyelet here, I'm just going to use my pokey tool and make sure it's exactly lined up. And just make sure your finger's not on the other side of that pokey tool, because it can go through with some force and you don't want to hurt yourself. So we're just going to pop it through there and then pop it back out where the other eyelet is. And I'm just, eyeballing this. But one thing I do try to do is, like, if I'm putting through like my pokey tool here, then I just want to wait until I have the needle ready to go and then poke that needle right through. If there's going to be a lag in time between when I do that, I'll just leave that pokey tool sitting in there. But that way things won't move around and get misaligned. So now I'm just bringing that through, and since I have so many layers of embroidery floss, it's just trying to keep that all straight. And I'm just going to make sure it's nice and tight before I tie the knot. And I wouldn't like over tighten it, because then it puckers, but you just want to have it tight enough that those pages aren't loose. You want to have them nice and secure. And I just want to make sure everything's straight inside those pages. I just don't want any kind of a tangle going on where I can't really see it, because at that point, if I tie it, then you're going to have some lag. So you just want to make sure that everything's nice and straight and working before you tie the knot. So I'm just going to add a dot of glue, and I don't always do this, but since I have kind of short pieces here and I can't make like a really good set of knots, I'm just going to go back and add a dot of glue just to kind of set this knot in place. So I'm going to be adding some dangles to these. And I'm just going to keep working. I mean, the glue will set itself within a few minutes, but it's not going to hurt it too much if I'm moving it around. So I just put a little like clear pendant on this, and I just think it's a nice sparkly thing to add to it. And remember that eyelet, I kind of offset it too much. So when I add these things onto it, it does really like obscure that eyelet's not exactly in the right spot. It's not exactly lined up. But by the time I'm done here, it will be really hard to see that there's any problem with that at all. So I'm going to also add some dangly things to the top as well. And I'm just sticking with the metallic theme, like a burnished bronze kind of a theme or a pewter theme. here, but I have like a nice flower, and I've had this for a long time, so I'm really excited to be able to use this flower. And then I have also some smaller, just metallic kinds of dangles. So this flower, I'm pretty sure I got at Michael's, and then a lot of these other, well, some of these buttons are Prima, and some of these metallic pieces are Prima, but then I also have some charms that I got from Hobby Lobby. So I'm going to try to use some of those here as well. So just picking out ones that are real similar in color. So at this point, I don't want to start adding a bunch of crazy color to this journal, but I'm just trying to keep everything a little bit subdued. So what I'm going to do is just take a long piece of embroidery floss and then just string these all onto that, and then I will tie that inside of the knotted area where this thread is coming out from the binding. So once you have that binding area, it almost makes a bit of a loop, and you can loop things through that as long as it's knotted or it's glued pretty tight. Then you can start adding dangles to that area. So it just kind of gives you almost like not a jump ring, but that kind of a thing where you've already got a loop, and so you can just start looping things through there. But when I start stringing things on this embroidery floss, I just want to make sure, first of all, you got to make sure that all these have holes or have similar holes so that they hang appropriately. Because sometimes if you have like one with a really large jump ring, it's going to kind of sag down. So if that's the look you're going for, of course, that's totally fine. But these all have pretty similar small holes on them. So when I'm stringing them on, I'm just trying to think which pieces do I want first and which way are they going to face. So I'm just making sure at this point that everything is kind of lined up the way I want it to end up, and everything is facing one direction. And then when you go and tie that in, you just want to be mindful of the way that it's facing, so that like your dangles aren't all backwards, or they're not going, like if you want it front to back, they're not going back to front. So you just want to make sure everything's lined up and facing the correct way before you start tying things on. And in this case, I just want that flower to be the first dangle that you see. And that charm has a real set, like front and back. The back part isn't like a nice decorative thing. It's like the kind of like the B side of that nice flower. So I do have to make sure these things are facing all the right direction. And then I'm just going to tie a nice bow with this. So when you add these longer pieces, I could even be adding like some small ribbon or something too. That would look pretty too. But I'm just then putting a nice bow in it. But this is the kind of thing where if this is sitting on your bookshelf, you might remember the dangles that are on here. And so you know, like if you have a whole bunch of different books, you'll be able to recognize quickly what journal you're looking for if you recognize the dangles that are on the binding. So I'm loving having all these metal pieces, just being able to use some of these up on this journal. Because a lot of times I'll have things and I'm thinking, well, I don't know where exactly I would use this, but then when you need it, then it seems to all work together. So, and then now I'm just adding some beads, like clear crystal type beads to, I forget what you call it, but it's, you know, when you're making jewelry and you have the piece of wire that has like one end where it's like a stopper, so the beads won't go all the way down. So I'm gonna add some clear beads that way. And what I'm gonna do, I'm just trying to figure out how many beads look right on this, because it's funny, the littlest thing, like if I add too many beads or too few beads, it just looks a little off. So I'm just trying to be careful to look at how it's gonna look before I go ahead and finish this piece. But I'm just gonna use my jewelry pliers here and just you know, you bend it over and then I basically keep looping it around so it has a nice loop, but I want to make sure that I get it through the loop from that other pendant. And then once I loop that around several times, then it's just set, so nothing will knock it out. So okay, so just make sure everything will, you know, hang right and it's not going to be, you know, getting in the way or anything like that. So the journal like lays properly and nothing's kind of tugging on that paper. It all can lay flat. So here's our finished journal, and it's got quite a few pages, so these are the shorter pages. And then I love these larger pages with that punched edge. But I guess it's nice, it's almost like a two-section notebook, just kind of like naturally. But there's plenty of pages to be able to use this for a while. I have a video on my channel about coffee dyeing paper, and I use some hibiscus flower tea to dye paper. So that's a really nice video if you've never done that before. It walks you through all the steps on how to do that, and I do it a little bit different than other people, like other journalers do. So it would be kind of nice to walk through that video and just kind of see the steps that I take with the paper to get it to a point like this where it's like that beautiful pink paper. So if you've never done that before, it is kind of nice to watch a few different videos and see like how different people handle that and how they do that, because these dyed papers, when they're coffee dyed, or you can dye them with other things, they just turn out so nice, and it has just such a great texture to it, and it gives you the idea of an old book, and I just think it's really beautiful. So good thing to learn how to do. And I always have a stack of coffee dyed papers, and now I have a stack of hibiscus flower tea dyed papers. But it's really nice because every time you go to paint a new journal, you already have papers ready to go. So kind of a nice thing to do. So I think that might be the first video on this channel, so feel free to go back to that and watch that. But thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this project, and I hope that you do one of your own. So thank you so much.